There it is.
All right.
Well, Brian, we're going to have the call order and let you do the explanation of the procedures.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. And this is Brian Yates with Schwartz, Page and Harding. Welcome everybody to Montgomery County MUD number 36 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, July the 21st, 2021. I'll first go through the remote meeting procedures one last time before we start to meet in person next month, and then we'll perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this evening so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with the roll call for our board of directors, Scott Haynes.
Present.
Jan Price.
Present.
Amy Polk.
Present.
Is Mamie in the meeting?
She is here. She just said present.
Crap. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Pam Fontenot.
Here.
John Yours.
Present.
Okay. Form of our present, so we will move on to the roll call for Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois.
Present.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Jeannie Scott.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting? If not, we will move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly. Is Ron in the meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. Ed Shackelford.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting? Okay, I don't hear anyone else from the River Authority, so we will move on to MUD 36 consultants. Do we have any MUD 36 consultants in the meeting?
Hey, Brian, Adam Cohen with Baird is on.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Any other district consultants in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well. All right, Maureen, does that appear to cover everyone who's logged into the meeting?
There's one phone number I didn't catch. It ends in 9468.
That's me, Maureen.
I'm sorry.
All right, it sounds like we have, this is Brian, it sounds like we've covered everybody. That'll complete the roll call. I'll hand it over to Scott to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. We appreciate it, your help through all these months of going through this procedure. Item 2 on our agenda for standard items is receive comments from the public. I don't believe we have any. So we'll go to item 3. Consider and act on requests for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district. Do we have any those requests?
Hi, Scott. This is Jeannie. I don't have any.
And this is Mike. I have no adjustments this month either.
Okay, great. Then we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there any items in the consent agenda that directors would wish to discuss tonight? If not, Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Mamie. I so move.
Motion's been made. Is there a second to approve the consent agenda?
This is Jan, I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We'll now do a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price?
Aye.
Mamie Poe?
Aye.
Pam Fontenot?
Aye.
John Yours?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. We'll move item 9 of the regular agenda. Adopt resolution casting votes for the MCAD special district candidate to be placed on a countywide ballot for the board of directors of the Montgomery Central Appraisal District. There are 2 candidates that have been that are being presented. I'm trying to find them real quick here.
This is Brian. It's Arthur. Go ahead, Jim.
As a reminder, each MUD unanimously supported Arthur Bredehoff last month to be placed on the ballot. This is your opportunity to actually cast your vote.
So this is adopting a resolution to nominate Arthur Bredehoff.
No. This is the resolution to cast your votes for Arthur in this election.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move that we cast our vote for Arthur in the election.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
This is Jan, I second that, please.
We'll now vote for the resolution. Roll call, Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price?
Aye.
Mamie Poe?
Aye.
Pam Fontenot?
Aye.
John Yours?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Item 10, receive the San Jacinto River Authority Wilderness Division report.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Meeks. I do not have anything to add to the report, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Chris? If not, we'll move to item 11. Consider an act on the fiscal year 21-22 budget for the River Authority Wilderness Division.
So good evening, everyone. Chris Meeks again. If you have any questions on the budget that's been presented, we can answer those. If not, this is the item where you would direct your trustee on how to vote.
Do we have any questions for Chris about the budget? If not, do we have a motion to approve? Are we approving the budget, Brian?
This is Brian. So the action is to give direction to your trustee to vote to approve the budget. So we've developed this process over the last several years to make it clear to trustees that they have authorization from their board to vote for or against the budget. And that vote will occur at the August trustee meeting.
So this is not a motion as much as it is, like you said, provide guidance to Jan to vote for or against the River Authority budget.
This is Brian. We've actually been setting it up as a motion over the last few years to more formalize the direction.
Make a motion that we direct Jan to vote for the 21-22 San Jacinto River Authority budget.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
This is Mamie. I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We'll now have a roll call vote. Motion. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price?
Aye.
Mamie Poe?
Aye.
Pam Fontenot?
Aye.
John Yours?
Aye.
All right. Item 12. Okay, receive and act on information for retaining the Trinity River Authority water supply agreement.
Good evening, directors. My name is Ed Shackelford with the St. Jacinto River Authority, and going to share my screen with you all. Hopefully you can see the title slide. Back
Yes.
in May, we presented this information to the trustees along with each of the individual MUDs. The basic topic is Trinity River water supply option for Montgomery County. Back in May, the general, call it straw poll, general consensus was, yes, we want to continue doing long-range regional water planning. And so we presented to the trustees last week, and they encouraged us to come and visit with each of the MUDs this week. And so I'm finally starting to get this PowerPoint down, and you all are my last presentation for the month. So the first slide up is the issue, and the issue is Montgomery County is growing. This region is getting roughly 100 people a day, 1,000 people a month into the region. And with that comes an increased demand for water. There are a number of strategies being considered in the Region H planning process, but the significant one is this water supply option from the Trinity River. So let's get into the information and why we need to talk about it. Here's a slide from the Region H planning that identifies use of water, the different categories. The major category that impacts everybody is the municipal. And if you look under the column that says 2020, it's projecting that we're using 101,000 acre feet of water per year in domestic use. And that's through the MUDs, through all the cities, everybody. And then the Region H planning group plans based on a 50-year cycle and updates every 5 years. So that's why this chart goes out to 2070. They're planning for that 50-year water cycle. And as you follow the line across the line of municipal use all the way over to 2070, you can see how much the demand for water has grown. And then if you look at the numbers that are circled in red, that's the total demand of all of the categories that are shown on there. And so, you know, currently we're using about 115,000 in Montgomery County based on all the categories. And in 2070, we're going to be close to 290,000 acre feet. Now, how do you equate that to real life? Lake Conroe will produce 100,000 acre feet per year out of the lake without creating a major impact to the lake. There's a lot of conversation about what Lone Star's rules are going to do, but if you assume that they land somewhere around 100,000 acre feet of groundwater pumping, so that's 200,000. If you look at 2050, they're right at 200,000 total usage in Montgomery County. So anything beyond, any water use beyond 2050 has to come from somewhere other than the aquifer or the lake, because those sources are, call them expended, or not expended, they are committed. So river authorities do long-range planning, and to be prepared for the future, we need to continue that long-range planning. So anything beyond 2050 needs additional water supply. So let's talk about where it might come from. So we've mentioned that SJRA currently has a 50,000 acre feet per year option contract to buy water from the Trinity River Authority. And it would come out of the north end of Lake Livingston and go into the north end of Lake Conroe. And these colored lines that you see on the image on your screen are the potential routes that you might bring the water across from Trinity River into Lake Conroe. It's firm yield water, but to bring that water across, you'd have to have some pump stations, and you'd have pipelines and right of way and canals to move that water. In today's dollars, it's estimated to be about $300 million, a fair amount of money. Now, we're going to talk about some other numbers, but the amount for the design and construction is not included in these numbers because it's too far out to forecast. So currently, our 50,000 acre feet of option contract costs SGRA $237,500 per year. And that is rolled into the cost of water that you all pay. And to give you a point of reference, another point of reference, 1 cent on the water rate is equivalent to about $200,000. So this is about a little over a penny on the rate, paid for by all of the GRP participants, okay? So let's talk about what it takes to secure a contract and move the water. Our current option contract has several deadlines in there and has some requirements that we must comply with if this is to move forward. So by December of 2021, a few months from now, we've got to convert that option contract into a service area agreement. It's going to require some costs. We're going to have to hire some attorneys to help prepare that service area agreement. Additionally, we've got to do an interbasin transfer permit, and that will take several years to prepare, several years to get from the TCQ. It may even require some assistance from the state legislature. And you all know that nothing goes through the legislature the first time around. That's why we're anticipating it might require a couple of legislative sessions. By April of 2028, we've got to convert that service area agreement into a water supply contract. And because we're not taking water right away, we're paying a reservation of about $1.5 million per year to retain the right to move that water and use it. So let's talk about what the impact is to the residents in the Woodlands and also the participants to the GRP. If you'll look at the bottom part of this slide where it says potential increase above SGRA GRP rate. We talked about the period 2022 through 2027, where we've got the legal cost for the permitting and the agreement. That equates to about a penny per 1,000 gallons. And so for an average household in the Woodlands of 10,000 gallons, it's 10 cents on their water rate, on their water bill per month. So $1.20 a year to perfect that option contract. And then from 2028 going forward, it's 20 cents per household per month to pay the reservation fee. And I mentioned earlier, all of the customers of the GRP, which is 80 participants, 140 different water systems, plus all our raw water customers, are helping pay this cost. So just to reserve the water, it's not a big ticket to the water bill as a total. So why am I bringing it to y'all again? Originally, we were trying to set it up where our board made a decision by August as to whether to move forward with retaining this contract or letting it go. Because we hadn't gotten all of the confirmations that we were looking for, all the conversations with the various entities, we postponed that discussion until September. So what we're asking for tonight is either a vote of support or non-support for SGRA to continue pursuing the Trinity River Water Authority water supply option. Now, every MUD we've met with so far, and you all being the last, has voted to support this continued long-term water supply option. And so that's the end. That's the basic end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll put the demand slide back up so that you can kind of see that after 2050, we need more water, but you can't wait to buy it in 2049.
Will this be something that we'll be asking Jan to approve when it comes to the trustees? Or are we?
Now, well, ultimately, John, your vote of support or non-support, it would go to our board in September. If it's supported, then these costs will continue to be in the GRP rate moving forward. And it would just be part of the O&M costs of the GRP.
Okay.
And I got a simple question. This is Scott.
Sure.
Who is who do we pay? Who is getting this payment?
Obviously, I'll take it from the end user, you backwards. So you pay Woodlands Water pays us through the budget. We pay Trinity River Authority for the reservation of the water. And they have costs in their system for operation and maintenance of Lake Livingston, the Lake Livingston Dam, and they have system costs, just like we have system costs on the lake, just like Houston has system costs on Lake Houston.
Sure. I just forgot to ask that earlier.
Not a problem. Other questions?
No, I think, you made a good point that when we run out of well water and we consume all the water in Lake Conroe, this is the only reasonable source of additional water coming into our system. So I think that's a clear point.
And I would tell you, questions from some of the other MUDs have been, well, if we don't have this, what are the options? And the options are, one option would be, assuming the regulations are not in place, drill more wells and then possibly incur the associated negative associations of subsidence with that. Desalination would be another option, is bring water up from Galveston Bay or the Gulf of Mexico, but that brings in additional transportation costs. It brings in a lot of operational maintenance costs to do that. Another option would be, if there is water available in the Brazos River, you would do the same sort of thing as this, is you'd put a pump station on the Brazos River somewhere around Navasota and run a pipeline from Navasota all the way to Montgomery County.
There's no way to bring this amount of water out of the Catahoula and treat it either, is there?
You could you could do a well field kind of up in the northwest corner of the county, but what's still unknown is whether that would create some consolidation of the clays and create subsidence, or there would be a lot of treatment costs, because typically that water is not as clean as what's in the Jasper and the Evangeline, and it comes in hot in the sense where 105 degrees and you'd have to cool it.
Right. I make a motion that we support the SGRA in moving forward with the Trinity River Authority option, and we support everything that we need to do to keep that option alive.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second?
This is Jan, I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. We'll now vote on it. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price,
Aye.
Amy Polk,
Aye.
Pam Fontenot,
Aye.
John Yours.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ed. We'll move to item 13. Consider an act on appointing a stakeholder subcommittee member to participate in River Authority engineering consulting meetings related to wastewater plant consolidation.
In your packet is a memo from Ed Shackelford that somewhat summarizes the tasks that this committee or stakeholder member would.
One moment, Jim. Can everybody mute their microphones so we don't have a little feedback going on there? And Jim, you can go ahead and speak again. You're on mute.
Okay. Sorry about that. In your packet is a email from Ed Shackelford that gives a pretty good description of what this stakeholder group would be doing. We're looking at a member from the Chamber of Commerce, a member from the Howard Hughes Corporation, a member from the township, each of our 10 MUDs an opportunity to participate, and MUD 386. It's a fairly significant commitment, but we want to make sure you have the opportunity to be there. Now, having said that, any of the decisions that are made in the stakeholder group will then be vetted through the trustees, through the MUD meetings, so you'll have multiple opportunities to hear and get briefed on what's going on in that stakeholder meeting.
John, do you have any interest for participating in these meetings?
You know, since I'm working up here in Wisconsin for the next year, off and on, I just don't know that I've got time to really devote to this.
I certainly understand that. Jim, who so far is being considered for the committee?
Well, I think.
Hang on, I've got a list.
I know one of the MUDs declined. It was just too much of a commitment, so they declined to participate in this, and just will get feedback at the MUD level and the trustee level. But
So
I think
Bob Lilac, Richard Stromat, Don Sarich, Paul Brown. We had some names from today. Bruce Cunningham from MUD 6. Paul Martin from MUD 67, and I don't know how MUD 46 voted.
I think it was George Newman, if I remember.
But not all the MUDs have offered a representative.
How often will this group be meeting, Jim?
Scott, roughly once a month for a couple hours for a period of 10 or 12 to 15 months. So that's why we say it's a pretty significant time commitment. And it's going to be riveting conversation.
I have no question about that. John, I certainly understand why you can't participate. I'll be glad to participate unless there's somebody else who wants to, another director who wants to participate.
If one of y'all really want to learn about wastewater plants and what all the various components of it and the finances of it, we'd love to have you.
Is there any idea when the meetings are going to start?
We're trying to get things all lined out so that we can start sharing the scope of work in late August, early September. So pretty soon.
Okay. I will be glad to be part of the stakeholder subcommittee. And you can tell how much I am, how strong I feel about that with the way I've expressed it. But
I could hear a certain amount of excitement.
So I will. Do we need to have a motion on this, or is this just?
Yeah. Thank you,
Yes,
Scott.
please.
So by saying I agree to it is all I need to do, Brian?
No, it's an action item.
Brian, we do have an action item on there to approve the appointment of the subcommittee members. So we consider a motion to appoint Scott as the subcommittee member to represent MUD 36.
Well, I will appoint myself. I move to appoint myself, Scott Haynes. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Jan.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Scott, roll call vote, Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price. Jan, did you say aye?
Did you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, Mamie Pohl,
Aye.
Pam Fontenot,
Aye.
John Yours.
Aye.
All right, I'll look forward to getting the notice about when the meetings will be held.
Thank you all very much.
Item 14, receive the attorney's report.
This is Brian. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, board. Couple items of a general nature to report under the attorney's report, and then I do need to cover items 15 and 16 with the board. Under the attorney's report, one, I've been bringing to the board's attention that the governor has now formally announced that he will be rescinding his proclamation related to COVID that suspended the in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act, effective as of September the 1st. So any political subdivisions that are subject to the Texas Open Meetings Act that have not gone back to in-person meetings by the beginning of September will be required by law to do so at that time. Shouldn't impact y'all or the other Woodlands districts, since the intent is to start back with in-person meetings for all the Woodlands districts in August. We will have an item on your agenda next month to formally rescind your COVID resolution. You'll recall when COVID first started, we adopted resolutions or prepared resolutions for our district clients to adopt, and y'all adopted along with other districts. The resolution that set forth your ability to conduct meetings remotely and conduct business remotely. There's a provision in that resolution that states that the resolution expires upon rescission by the board or upon the expiration of the governor's proclamation. So since this board will begin meeting before the governor's proclamation expires at the beginning of September, we'll have an item on there to formally rescind that COVID resolution. Second item I wanted to cover under the attorney's report is that we do have the legislative summary from the 2021 session on the Google Drive for your review. As in prior sessions, it goes through a general overview of the session and bills of interest to the special purpose district community. By and large, it ended up being a fairly quiet session for special purpose districts. There were, as you may recall from earlier months during the spring, there were a number of bills that were filed, as there are each session, that range from somewhat problematic to extremely problematic. And we were able to work during the session to either improve bills that could be improved or work to ensure that bills that couldn't be improved were defeated. And those efforts were by and large very successful this session. So we're happy with a fairly quiet outcome to this session for 2021. We are monitoring the special session. There's a lot of political gamesmanship going on there right now, but if there ever is something of substance that comes out of one or more special sessions, we'll review that to see, especially from the election perspective, if general laws are changed in how elections are conducted or how voters are qualified or identified, then we will be sure to incorporate those into our future district elections. That's all I have of a general nature to report under the attorney's report. Happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
Are there any questions for Brian? Now we will move to, go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say, if not, we'll move to item 15. Consider adoption of resolution concerning developed district status for 2021 tax year.
This is Brian. So y'all may recall this being on your agenda last year, right around the time COVID hit. And it was on your agenda for the first time. It's an annual item going forward. It's a result of Senate Bill 2 that was passed during the 2019 session, the property tax reform bill. that bill had a number of components to it, but the overarching purpose was to implement different measures to reduce the increase in property tax burdens that are experienced by landowners throughout the state. The focus of the action tonight is the component of Senate Bill 2 that modifies the rollback tax rate calculation. So historically, the district was subject to an 8% rollback rate, and that meant that the district could impose a tax that generated 8% more O&M tax on an average resident homestead versus the prior year without being subject to a possible rollback election. If you exceeded that 8% cap, then voters could petition to force a rollback election. I couldn't point you to one example of a rollback election over the last 15 plus years. It just didn't happen. So what the legislature did as part of Senate Bill 2 was to break up districts into developed and developing categories, and each category had a different treatment for rollback tax rates. So whether you are in a developing or a developed district turns on the metric of whether the district has constructed and financed all the facilities and sites necessary to serve 95% of your projected ultimate build out. Consultant engineers with our district clients are in the best position to be able to make that determination because they work with your infrastructure, they work with your development. So when we first implemented this bill last year, we worked with all of our consultant engineer representatives to develop a form that they would fill out and sign that would certify as to whether or not the district was a developed or developing district, whether they met that 95% metric. And then we attach that form as an exhibit to your resolution. And your resolution states that you are declaring yourself either a developed or a developing district based on the information provided by your engineer attached to Exhibit A. That determination has to be made each year. If you are a developing district, if you don't have that infrastructure in place to serve 95% or more your ultimate build out, then it's pretty much status quo for your rollback rate. You still have an 8% rollback rate, and voters still have to petition to force a rollback election. If you have more than that 95% of infrastructure in place, then you are considered a developed district, and your rollback rate is slashed from 8% to 3.5%. And if you exceed that rate, then you are automatically subject to a rollback election. There's no petition requirement, which is a very significant change. Touched on it a little bit last year, but want to reiterate this year with what we're seeing in the real estate market right now, with increases in property values and home sales values. It's not it's not unlikely. It's very possible that we could have entities this year or next year, because sometimes there's a lag in the appraisal district pulling up taxable values versus where the market actually is. In the next couple of years, to have districts that are considered developed that have average resident homesteads increase in value by more than 3.5%, and those districts actually being forced to decrease their maintenance tax in order to generate no more than 3.5% revenue, because it's not a rate, it's not a 3.5% of the rate, it's the revenue. So we're going to be looking at that very closely over the next month as we're working to generate draft budgets and tax rate recommendations. For MUD 36, we've received the form from LJA, your consultant engineer, and it does reflect that 36, not surprisingly, is a developed district, since you don't have a whole lot out there remaining to be developed. Because of this, you are in the 3.5% range, and so we're going to be looking at that, your appraised values and your average resident homestead values very closely as we come up with your tax rate recommendations for this next year. So that's kind of a recap of how we got to this item on the agenda. I don't expect to go through this level of detail in future years, but since this is just the second year we're implementing SB2, wanted to go back and cover it with y'all again. Happy to answer any questions if you have them, but we do need to take action this evening to adopt the resolution declaring MUD 36 a developed district for 2021.
I make a motion that we declare that MUD 36 is a developed district for tax year 2021.
Is there a second?
This is Mamie. I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Now to a roll call vote. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price,
Aye.
Mamie Pohl,
Aye.
Pam Fondo,
Aye.
John Yours.
Aye.
Right, we'll now move to item 16. Consider an act on the issuance of the district's unlimited tax bond series 2021.
This is
A,
Brian.
approval of bond application report for the bonds.
Correct. And so we have several items on here this evening related to the bond issue, and we do need to go ahead and move forward at a fairly expedited clip in order to make sure that we can fund this bond issue at or near the time when you have to start making payments to Amoresco. If you end up needing to float a portion of it from your reserves while you're pending the receipt of the bond proceeds, we can deal with that. But there is a lead time for the TCEQ to review bond applications. So we've worked with LJA to expedite their preparation of the bond application report, and that is a fairly significant document. It's 40 plus pages with hundreds of pages of attachments. We got a draft of that on Friday. We worked over the weekend and turned that around and got them comments early this week. We've had a conference call with them today about those comments to get those revised and incorporated so we can get the application submitted to the TCEQ as soon as possible. The par amount of the bonds looks like it will be, when we add in a contingency in case there's any change orders for the installation of your meters, which probably won't be, but we don't want to go and not have enough authorization if that happens. So once you add that in, your overall bond issue amount looks to be less than 1.4 million, 1.3 and change. I think right now it's looking like 1.315, but we've prepared the resolution or the order authorizing the issuance to not exceed 1.4 to make sure we've got a little bit of flexibility as we finalize the bond application report. But we will be submitting the report on an expedited basis, which TCEQ does give you the ability to do that, but it requires, if you're going to do that, that the application be extremely clean. So that's why we have to scrub it pretty hard with the engineer to make sure that all the information in there is tight before we send that up, because we do have to send up the certification with the bond application report that's signed by the engineer, the financial advisor, and myself, that the application is complete in all respects. So when we send that up, general bond application review period can be 6 months plus, but if you send it up expedited by making those certifications and making sure that the application is in tip-top shape, on an application that does not involve any developer reimbursement items, you can have a 45-day expedited review. So that's what we're shooting for. I'll I'll level with you and let you know that the TCEQ is really starting to fall behind on applications. I've got the two most recent ones, and I've got a slew of them behind it, but that have come out in the last, or supposed to have come out in the last few weeks, are both behind. I've got one now where I just talked to the head of the review division today, and they're basically telling us they're going to be a month behind on a 60-day application. So that's all the more reason to get this thing sent up as soon as possible, because 45 days could, in reality, mean 75 days. So we are asking for approval on item A of the bond application report, subject to any final revisions by your district consultants, myself primarily, and Adam at Baird. That's item A. Item B is approval and execution of the order authorizing the issuance of the bonds, and so that is the order that will go to the TCEQ requesting their approval of the bond issue. That's B. And then C, the supplemental agreement for legal services between my firm and the adoption of the resolution regarding the information on Exhibit A to the agenda. That's because we haven't done a new money bond issue in this district in about 30 years. So we need to update that agreement with the district for this bond issue. So that's pretty much it for the bond issue items under 16. Happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
This is Scott. Real quick, I want to interject that last week's JPA meeting, I attended partially to request all the MUDs sharing the expense of moving the pole, communication pole, transmission pole that's been brought up in previous meetings. And at the time, we have not come up with a mechanism yet how to do this. But I would say that the overall attitude in the board of the JPA was that they would agree to share the costs of moving the pole. So I want to confirm that the cost of moving the pole has not been included in the request for funds to be received from the bond issuance. Is that correct, Jim?
That is correct. And just a small clarification, it will be discussed at the trustee level, but the actual decision on this, according to Brian, lies at the individual MUD meetings because it's their contract with Amoresco that will need to be modified. So we'll discuss it at the trustee meeting and maybe get a recommendation or comment or feedback from the trustees. But Brian, help me. I think you stated that it will have to go to each MUD individually.
This is Brian. That's correct. And so we've handled things like this in the past where it's actually a MUD decision, but you have the trustees discuss it and they can make a recommendation to the districts as to how to act. And that's how I figure this will probably work out.
And I apologize for interrupting, Brian. I'm just trying to address the amount of the bonds, that it does not include the moving of the pole.
This is Brian. That's correct. It's just the contract amount and a contingency for just general change orders to the contract that wouldn't necessarily be attributable to that pole. But there is no separate line item for pole relocation in this bond issue. And frankly, there's not enough time, even if you wanted to really do it, to try to do that at this point, because we don't really know what that. We don't have enough details to be able to include that in the bond application.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to make sure I made it. Do we need to have 3 motions here, Brian?
This is Brian. No, we can take action on 16 A, B, and C as a group.
I make a motion that we approve the bond application report We approve the execution of the order issuing the bonds, and we approve the agreement with Schwartz, Page, and Harding.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Pam.
Thank you, Pam. Motion's been made and second. We'll now have a roll call vote. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price,
Aye.
Amy Polk,
Aye.
Dan Fontenot,
Aye.
John Yours.
Aye.
I will say this, I've been on the board a long time. Jan, have you ever had to vote on any kind of bonds? I mean, that shows how long this has been since we've had to do this.
I can't remember. I've been on the board 29 years, and if so, it was early on.
Yeah.
I think there might have been one time real early on because I got a phone call trying to sell me the bonds later from the guy who was handling it.
Right.
Yeah, this is Brian. In the bond application report, we've got to include all that historical information. So we were just looking at that, and your last new money bond issue was in 1992.
When I came on.
Wow. All right. Let's move to item 17, receive and act on Woodlands Water Agency staff update regarding lease purchase options for the AMI project.
And I think that we just covered it. That was a kind of a carryover from last month.
Great. Item 18, consider and act on Montgomery County Municipal Utility District 36 retail water and sewer rates.
This is a kind of formalizing the action we took last month. We need to update your policies, water and sewer policies officially for the new rates.
I make a motion that we update the policies for MUD 36 residential water and sewer rates.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? I'll second it. We'll now have a roll call vote. Scott Haynes, aye. Jan Price,
Aye.
Amy Polk,
Aye.
Pam Fontenot,
Aye.
John Yours.
Aye.
All right, great. Well, we move to item 19, receive the general manager's report.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to cover some items from the trustee meeting. At the request of a MUD 46 director, we talked about the feasibility, the possibility of implementing an assistance program where our residents could donate a dollar or something on their water bill to help residents in the mud or in the woodlands that were unable to pay or needed some assistance. You've probably seen this, well, other cities do it. Houston does it, Huntsville does it. I think I've seen it on other utility bills. But Brian said that it would be very difficult for MUDs to do that. So we put that on pause for the time being. We also talked about the 1970s Ian McCard reports that were done for George Mitchell at the beginning of the woodlands. So we encourage you to take a look at those. They have some information that's kind of pertinent today when it comes to drainage and groundwater issues. We did report that TACUS has actually paid one of the 5, just to recap, we've invoiced their 5 prime contractors for the damage to our water system that's been done. And TACUS has actually kind of assisted us with that effort. And one of those 5 prime contractors kind of cut off communication with TACUS and wasn't responding to our invoice. So TACUS actually paid that invoice in full, about $35,000, as I guess you would call it a show of goodwill. But we've still got 4 other invoices that we got to resolve, and hopefully they'll apply some pressure to those other 4 remaining prime contractors, and we'll know more about that over the next week or 2. In your packet, we reported HARC has finished their recommendation for subsidence monitoring devices throughout Montgomery County. I know, John, you'd be interested in seeing that, and it's available for public view along with a story map that they've created for the public to educate themselves on subsidence and groundwater issues. We did have a meeting, me and the San Jacinto River Authority staff met with Congressman Kevin Brady's district director here in the Conroe area, expressing to them our desire to make sure we're in the best position possible to take advantage of any money that may come from the Biden infrastructure plan that's being promoted. Very productive meeting. They have notified the Washington, D.C. office of our interest. We're going to have a follow-up meeting in early August with Kevin Brady attending. And we're also working on the short list of consultants and lobbyists that might help us with that effort. And just as a reminder, especially for the new directors, Ron Kelly will be hosting a Follow the Water seminar in August. So please let Shelley know if you're available to attend that very informative seminar workshop in August. And that concludes my report.
I will be meeting with Jim Spigner in the next week or so, and I'm going to remind him that we have recommendations on where to put the monitors, and I will keep working on him to understand why 12 out of 14 monitors that we already have are showing subsidence, whether they're in the Jasper or the Evangeline. So I don't understand why they don't see that. So one more try.
Good. Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you very much, John, for doing it. Any questions for Jim? All right, if not, we'll move on to item 20, see the Woodlands Water Trustees Report. I attended the meeting this month. We have a Janet said situation we're able to attend, so I was glad to fill in for her. There were quite a few old friends there, some new friends, people I hadn't met before. They were all very cordial to me and my request about moving or relocating the transmission pole. I did try to point out that it's really part of 17 or 18 poles are part of a grid, and I asked, and only one director said he had gone to see the pole in their area, but nobody else responded that they were aware of how the pole was placed or where it was placed or where it is at this time. So I think because that the way I discussed it and brought it up, I think they're very receptive to our plight here, or plight's not a better way to describe it, our situation. And I think even though we don't know the mechanism for this to occur, that I do think that we will be having, we'll be able to take care of this in a way that does not just solely place it upon MUD 36 to move. Most of the other important items that relate to MUD 36, such as the agreement with the Trinity River water supply, and we're already covered. If there's any questions that anybody has about the meeting, I'd be glad to answer them now, or if anybody has any questions that they like, I can be glad to talk about it at their convenience. If not,
I have a question, Scott.
Go
I have
ahead.
a question. This is Pam Fontenot. Is there any way to prevent objectionable placements of those poles in the future? Because if I remember correctly, it was going to cost a couple $100,000 to move it. Is that correct?
You are correct about the cost of that. That's why I went to the meeting trying to see if there was any relief from that. Jim, are these, once these poles are in place, unless there's some kind of damage or maintenance, there won't be any new poles added, am I correct?
That is correct. And as far as the placement, you know, I asked the question of our vendor when we got these complaints. First of all, the poles were placed where it was optimum coverage and sites exist. We didn't have to buy a site. We were able to use an existing site of either SJRA or the Woodlands Water or a park. So they were sited for optimum coverage. They met all the criteria, technical criteria for being placed there. But I never anticipated somebody complaining. And I asked the vendor, and they have installed these poles all across Texas and other communities. And this is the first time they've ever had a concern brought from a resident of the pole, and it's how it impacted their view and their property.
Scott, where was this pole located?
It's located, Jim, it's located on the, within the lot of the.
It's the water plant 1 on Slash Pine.
Water plant, yeah.
Center River Authority water plant 1, where there's ground storage tanks, there's pumps, there's a whole host of water equipment there.
It's mostly observed from the area that we added most recently, Cokeberry, some homes there. But it's also, you can also observe, is it from Slash Pine, or where's the other area, Jim, that people could see it?
The other pole is at a water well site, again, owned by the San Jacinto River Authority, where a lot of equipment on the site. It's up near the intersection of Woodlands Parkway and Kirkendall, kind of close to the HEB up there in that.
I'm sorry, Jim, what I was asking was, within Mud 36, where residents have called, other than the Cokeberry area, isn't there another location
There
on the other
have
side?
been two homes. The family that you know from a previous location, and then another. Both of them are adjacent to the water.
So
plant.
primarily Cokeberry, maybe, and is where it's observed. And I would say, I know we've had 2 complaints, but I think it's a situation where if 2 people call, more people have noticed it and have issue with it.
Okay, this is Pam again. Why can't we camouflage the pole instead of moving it with a nice tree or shrub?
You know what? If you went over to that area to see it, Pam, you can't really camouflage it because it's a very tall pole. How tall is it, Jim? A couple hundred feet?
Well, that particular pole is 125 feet.
Excuse me, 125 feet. And
Okay.
it would be, you could try, there was discussed the opportunity of trying to camouflage it like a tree or something like that, but it would still be a straight pole that's over 125 feet tall.
And it's actually more expensive to replace it with a tree type pole than it is to relocate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm glad to talk to anybody about what I know about it at any time. We will move to item 21, recess to closed session to consult with the district's attorney pursuant to Texas Government Code.
This is Brian. There's no need to go into closed session today.
Okay. Well, that's good because I've forgotten how to dial in to get the phone call. I was going to
Well, and
scramble
after
to
today,
find
you
those
won't have to worry
instructions.
about it. Starting next
All right,
month, it won't matter.
item 23, discuss future agenda announcements for placement of future agenda. Does everybody remember how to drive to the building for the meeting next month?
Yes.
Try to be a little humor there, it didn't work. If there's no more matters for future agenda, we will adjourn, and I look forward to seeing everyone in person and not a little square on my screen starting next month.
Very good.
Thank you all very much for this monthly meeting and all the meetings we've gone through this way. Good night.
Good night. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye.